to do on behalf of the Greater Manchester Primary Care Board. I'll introduce ourselves in a moment. I have some of my team who have joined the call as well. Now, the important thing is with this, whilst we're all spread out all over GM, I want us to feel like we're in sort of an informal space. I want you to feel relaxed. There is going to be a lot of me presenting, but really, I want you to get as much out of this as possible, because that's our sole aim of spending the time this afternoon with you. So I'm just going to share my screen and hope it works. Okay, I will put it into large mode. So I'll start with some housekeeping. As it says, most webinars ask you to switch your cameras off. But honestly, there's nothing worse than speaking to an empty screen or ones with initials. So please do feel free to put yours on and leave it on. If you're eating your lunch, that's fine. But it's a really beneficial for us as a group to be able to get some feedback as we speak. It's a long session, an hour and a half. We will share all the slides and the additional resources. So we're not only doing these talks, but we're going to be building and giving you access to a lot of the tools that will help you implement some of this. We are recording, so others not here can view it afterwards, but please don't let that stop you asking questions or having your camera on. We will pause to take questions at various points in the session, because it's part and parcel of doing these, but do bear in mind there's a lot of people joining us. I think over 200 have registered, so bear with us. We'll leave the chat on as well. I won't be able to look at that and do what I'm doing, but we'll leave it on. If it becomes too unwieldy, we can pause it for a little while. But members of my team will definitely be keeping an eye on that. So when we pause, hopefully they can bring some of those through. We will get to all the questions in the chat, even if we don't manage to do it during this, we will do it afterwards, and we will write an FAQ and disseminate that. Importantly, and I know this is really hard when you're in practice, but try and avoid doing anything else during this session if you can. You've decided it's important enough to enrol and you've showed up. There's 109 of you there at the moment. You've decided the next hour and a half, this is more important than the 101 things that you could be doing. So really allow yourself to be present, take as much as you can out of the next hour and a half, and sort of give yourself permission to close out, look down, e-mist, and put your phone on silent. I've done the same because there's many distractions that could get in the way of really focusing on this. Okay, so who are we and why have we been asked to do this today? So hopefully you've all heard of an LMC. You will have one in your respective areas. We as an LMC cover Salford, Stockport and Trafford localities. So we're the largest LMC in Greater Manchester. 93 practices make up our sort of membership and who we support and advocate for, represent, negotiate on behalf of, and support CQC turnaround if they find themselves in the need of it. But we really try and do some more proactive work, of which this is a part of that. They in turn provide care to over 900,000 registered patients, so almost a quarter, or a third actually, of all GM patients. We've got myself, who's the CEO, and our medical director across the 3 localities, Aria, who's on the call today. I have a background, a nursing background, a commissioning background, and have been in this role for almost 10 years. Aria's a GP in Trafford, and also has other roles with other providers, NHS dispute, governance roles, medico-legal roles as well. So is very well placed to have a good breadth of knowledge to support practices. We then have Salford, Stockport and Trafford representatives who work with us very closely as our small team, but we have medical officer Dr. Ashish Chowdhury in Salford. Stockport is Howard, and Aria undertakes that role in Trafford for us. And vital members of our team are our practice manager leads who have come forward, been through a process, and they are what allow me to do my job, and they really help bring back the voice of the practices in their area. So just want to welcome them as well. Andrea Simpson, Johan Taylor and Efrosini. If you've got your cameras, guys, stick it on for a moment. And then we have our very small but perfectly formed support team. Many of you whose area we cover, you'll know the name Kerry. And Joe is the newest member of our team, who is also a very experienced commissioning manager in a few chapters ago, and joins us with a really substantial knowledge around implementing work streams and primary care. So that's just a little bit about who you've got here, and who you're welcome actually as a team to contact after this if you feel it would be helpful. So what are we doing? We've been commissioned to do a CQC webinar series. Really, it's to provide you all, whether that's a GP, a practice manager, a part of the administrative team, whether it's somebody from the R's team, anybody who really wants to get a different feel to CQC. It's about providing you with dedicated time and space to consider the role of the culture within your practice. And really, we want to focus on the things as well that, you know, change the narrative between inadequate, requires improvement, good and outstanding. The aim is to empower you, build a solid foundation, and really get the feeling that anyone who feels they've got this on their shoulders, it's not just your responsibility. This is something, achieving a good outcome and CQC compliance is not the responsibility of just one or a handful of people. It's absolutely everybody's responsibility within the practice, even though they might not realise it. So what we want to do is work through some of that over the course of this 4 seminars, building on each one as we go. So they do complement one another. The learning outcomes you will have seen on the flyer, understand the 5 key questions in the new world, in the new single framework. I'm very aware some of you will have been inspected under that framework, and some of you won't. We'll go from there. Can I just check everything, because I can see you? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, absolutely fine.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. We want to talk through how we recognise that organisational culture underpins performance in all domains. It's not a separate thing. It's related to everything you do. Apply the cultural principles to daily practice, and really be able to better understand and demonstrate compliance through lived examples and not just the policies that are in your shared drive. And ultimately, for me, having helped a number of practices turn around, having been in special measures or requires improvement, I want you to go away from this series feeling more in control and less anxious about CQC inspections, because there's nothing worse than that dread and feeling like no matter how hard you work, no matter how many hours you put in, you never feel like you're ready. And so we want to give you the control back and really help you feel that not just you, but your team, everybody you work with knows exactly their role and how they contribute in order to make it better for everybody. The audience, as I've said, it's everybody and anybody from general practice. There's no hierarchy in this room. Everybody is welcome. So if your colleagues, as we journey through this today, if you think, well, I'd really like such and such here, then, you know, get them to enroll on the next seminar, and they will have this recording to look back over to get up to speed. So we've got the 4 different modules. I won't go through each of them, but what I would say is today is about setting the scene and setting the foundations. So I apologize if you know some of this, but this is about getting everybody to the same sort of level of understanding. It will reinforce what you know if you already know it, and it might just open up you know, a few different avenues if you haven't heard it framed this way before. The next session, everything we go through today, we will then put into more practical support next time. So that's when we'll start to drill down on what some of the more broader concepts look like. We'll then talk about in module 3 demonstrating the culture. In module 4, we're going to get together a group of people who have been through it in the last couple of years, those that have found it really hard and didn't get the outcome that they were hoping for, those that absolutely, you know, did everything they need to and got recognized for it, and everything in between, and the learning that those that needed the support and had to do things differently, the learning that they got on that journey. Because I can tell you, everybody who starts in that really dreaded place, by the time you've done turnaround and you've embedded everything you've learned into your culture, every single practice that I've ever helped has come out the other side saying, well, that was hell, but we are in really good shape. The team get it. We all get it. We've all got our part to play, and it's palpable. So it doesn't matter where you are on the journey. Hopefully there's something you can take from it. So what's changed and what can you expect? So what we do know, and I'm not going to read all these line for line, you will have it to take away with you. But what we know, sorry, just got to move something my end, is the new framework has reshaped how health and social care providers are regulated and inspected. Previously, the CQC used 3 separate frameworks for hospitals, adult social care and GP practices. These were replaced with the unified model this time last year, which the aim behind that is it ensures consistency across different types of providers using one set of expectations to define good and outstanding care. So what we know is it's a rolling assessment now. Previously, they would have given you your 2 weeks notice, come in, done the searches. The day you receive your 2 weeks notice, they would go in, have a look in your systems, send you ask for lots of paperwork beforehand. You would put together your presentation. They would come in on the day, and it would be 1 or 2 days of really intense interacting and then watching and observing, speaking to patients, your staff, your leaders. Now it's very different. It's going to be a rolling assessment model to monitor services continuously, so they can get information from a number of different sources, and they will have dashboards which give them an indication of either doing a full inspection or coming in and review in the background. But that can include virtual interviews, feedback from people using the service, staff surveys, off-site evidence reviews, and risk-based assessments as well. So it isn't, in-person inspections still happen, but they're not the only way they gather the evidence. But what has remained the same is the single assessment framework still revolves around the 5 key questions. Is the service safe, effective, caring, responsive, and well-led? So what's changed and what should you expect? Again, what's changed is how the CQC assesses providers against these questions. Previously, the framework consisted of 27 CLOEs and around 300 prompts, which they had on their website published. It's been streamlined into 34 quality statements with the aim of simplifying the process, supposedly making it more transparent and focused, and taking out some of the variation that perhaps we've seen on our patch across GM from inspector to inspector. They will make local comparisons against regional to inform its decision making, and it has a greater emphasis on external based practice within the quality statements. So again, it's based on evidenced work again, rather than just individual sort of preferences and views. There is a new digital portal that's been introduced for practices to upload your evidence directly to, and a scoring framework has been introduced into the assessments to support the rating calculation. The CQC, I must say, having spent a long time looking at these recently, they've created a quicker web-based inspection report. Those that are published on the website are significantly smaller and shorter than they've ever been. But obviously that would come through to practices differently as well. Each key question is supported by a set of quality statements that describes what good care looks like. These are the commitments and standards they will hold practices to account for and are written as the we statements. I statements used to reflect what people using the service should experience, and the 34 quality statements are allocated across each of the 5 questions. Clearly not completely the same number, but you know, all around the 7 to 8 mark. 34 quality statements are outlined in this table. Again, I won't go through it, but it's there for your reference and taken directly from the CQC website, just to start to really drill down what sits in where. However, some of those will sit across all domains as well. An example I wanted to share with you, their website, and we'll come on to look at their website a little bit later and some key learning. This is what they have on there as part of the learning culture. So that first one in that table that I've just put up, the quality statement, what they expect you to do. This one is clearly very apt for this section, this series of seminars. Will have a proactive and positive culture of safety based on openness and honesty, in which concerns about safety are listened to, safety events are investigated and reported thoroughly, and lessons are learned to continually identify and embed good practice. So nothing you won't have heard before if you've been very heavily involved in CQC before. Talks about what that means, they break it down for you, and then they give some of the more specific things. So what raising concerns does, incidents and complaints, lessons learned as well. The I statements, the subtopics that this statement covers around organisational learning and actions, continuous improvement, duty of candour. But within this as well is your freedom to speak up, processes and guardian as well. Gives you the regulated activity, and it also on the website for each of these gives you links to click on. Now, when I first started doing CQC, I used to look at the website like, 15 years ago and think, good grief, there's so much on here. I'm never going to get my head around it. And you do get your head around it. And there's a way that we will help you look at this and break it down so it's less intimidating. A lot of these play into one another. And the Mythbusters, which again we'll come on to, really should be, rather than it say we may search on this, it really should say we will, because everything in these Mythbusters is pretty much a clue to the focus of the inspections. So as well as those other bits, it's CQC's introduced 6 new evidence categories to organise information under the statements and use for scoring. So the evidence categories, as you can see, the people's experience, focusing on understanding individual needs, expectations, lived experience and satisfaction with their care. This is where your evidence from your surveys, interviews and feedback forms really comes into play. Feedback from staff and leaders, gathering input from healthcare professional and organisational leaders, includes results from staff surveys, interviews, focus groups and feedback from leadership. This one is a very interesting one, actually. Feedback from partners, collecting perspectives from external organisations and stakeholders. So not your GP partners or your PM partners if you have them. This is about going more broadly outside your organisation and asking for feedback, asking, might be care homes that you look after. Observation, of course, direct observation from care delivery allows the assessors to evaluate the quality of the interactions between staff and patients, the implementation of procedures and the overall environment. So how does it feel to be in your practice? What's the staff confidence level? And processes, we know the dreaded examining the policies, procedures and protocols that guide care delivery. And we know that can often be a mammoth task. And again, next time when we speak, we'll look at how that can be done in a more structured, seamless way if you haven't already adopted one. And the outcomes looks at the patient health outcomes and overall service effectiveness. So how are you inspected in the new framework? Thankfully, they don't assess all 34 assessments in every inspection. They select priority statements based on risk, concerns raised or sector-specific relevance, because they have, of course, the same set of assessments across all the care sectors that are CQC'd. Not all elements will be considered in a statement either. Each quality statement is linked to one or more evidence categories, and inspectors evaluate whether the evidence supports compliance within the statement. Starts to get a little bit jargony. CQC use the evidence to score each of the quality statements. These scores combine to give an overall rating. So they're still maintaining the same ratings, whether it be outstanding, good, etc. You get that overall. As they have done in the past, before finalising, practices are given the chance to review information and ensure all relevant information has been considered. So that's that short window they give you to look over it, typically for factual accuracy. In the past, we've known some practices have used it to challenge. If it is looking like you're getting anything other than an outstanding or a good, often the advice we give is to focus on factual accuracy and using the time that you might put forward a case to change the rating into actually doing the evidence improvement work and bringing all that together. But that, of course, is down to a practice's view. Typically, CQC inspectors like practices to show insight. If you've got absolute evidence that they've met, then of course you're more than able to submit that. But where you're struggling, it's better to invest that time and energy into the turnaround element. Final report again will be published on the website in the new format. As of last year, they changed the way they apply scores to assessments. Evidence is scored based on a 1 to 4, 1 showing the most significant shortfalls, 4 showing an exceptional standard, and that's given for each quality assessment. They're weighted equally unless certain circumstances such as a warning notice require otherwise, and the scores are combined to form a percentage which is converted back into a score for easy understanding. So again, it's starting to understand that there is a framework behind this, there is a scoring template in order to try and reduce some of the variation that we know exists. So under those 5 key headings, they aggregate the quality statement score to produce a key question score, calculating a percentage and using the thresholds below to convert it into a rating. So as you'd expect, outstanding, has a very high threshold, and inadequate, you have to be getting a quarter to a third things not as they need to be in order to be in that category. What they've also shared, if you haven't seen it before, to provide an overall rating for CQC aggregate scores from the 5 key questions using a set of principles. So they're weighted equally, as we've said. Outstanding rating requires at least 2 key questions to be rated as outstanding and 3 as good. So if you're striving to be outstanding, it's at least 2 of outstanding, and no requires improvement. So good rating is given if there are no inadequate ratings and no more than 1 rating of requires improvement. If 2 or more key questions are rated as requires improvement, the overall rating will be the same. And if 2 or more key questions are rated inadequate, the service will be rated as inadequate. So even if you've got all goods in the other 3 areas, but you've got 2 or more or 2 inadequates, you will automatically become an inadequate overall. So just to summarize, the old inspection versus the new single assessment framework. So we've got, although number of quality statements has risen, the prompts, the questions behind those is fewer. Rather than it just be documents and inspection day, information gathering, it's multiple sources and it's ongoing potentially. Frequency before was scheduled, now it's flexible, risk-based and continuous. So, you may not know what they're doing in the background, and it's about that needing to have robust processes in place, embedded within the culture of your practice. But that's why we're here today, to give some pointers and some support with that. Tailoring, before it was very much specific to the service. Now it's unified, but of course each sector has their own considerations. Rating currency linked to inspection. Now it combines old and new evidence as well. So it's not just the current situation, it's looking back as well, and seeing the change that's been implemented. And focus was very much on inspection preparation, and now it's around continuous quality improvement. Okay, so I'm tempted to take a short pause. I'm going to stop sharing And I'm just going to see if there are any questions that we pick up at this point. Anything in the chat? No questions at this point? Okay. No hands? Okay, I shall carry on. Oh, a hand. Thank you. Hi, Kirsty.
Hi. I think I've seen that they're trying to get rid of this new way and revert it back to the old way. Is that right? Or are we still working on this new one?
Well, that's a good question. I haven't specifically heard that. Everything, all the current information that they share and the reports that we've been looking at are very much looking at what we're currently talking about here as a foundation. What I have really learnt now is the fundamentals of what you'll be doing in practice haven't really changed. So everything we're touching on here seems significantly different. In reality, it isn't. The same processes apply, the same way in which you work apply. So I think even if it does change, even if it does supposedly revert back, I really do think at the end of the day, what you need to be focusing on as practices remains the same. It's just how they may collect the data, how they might take other things into consideration.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so I'll open the presentation back up and we'll keep going. Okay, so this isn't to bombard you. Most of you will know it already, but what we do know is we have a number of areas that we know CQC look at, and we know many of these, if not all of them, are your core business. It might be that one person has the massive job of holding the rings around this. It might be very split very differently between leadership. So it's all split up. It depends on your size of your practice. But what we're going to do again is not necessarily today, but during this course, we're going to look to make this a more manageable list. Okay, because just looking at this, it feels like a bit of a minefield, but I can guarantee you're all very much doing all of this already and living and breathing it. It's just what we want to help those of you who need a bit of support doing it is doing it in the easiest and least stressful possible way. So that's what we know already. That's what they already look at. And again, there's every chance there's more to be added to that. What we know as well from the more recent inspections is, and again, this is all within the Mythbusters on the CQC website, but they're really keen on looking at certain clinical conditions, annual registers, and the case studies, the care plans, the processes of annual review, not just annual review, but the processes of every time there's an interaction with that patient as well. So one of the key areas they're looking at the moment is hypothyroidism and the monitoring of levothyroxine. They're focusing on people with hypothyroidism who have not had the thyroid function test monitoring for 18 months. There's a number of things that they will look at. They'll no doubt run searches on. Again, this is available in different places, which I'll signpost you to after we've completed this section. We also know that there's a firm focus on diabetes, in particular patients whose diabetes was whose latest HbA1c was greater than 75. Now, this is something that, you know, you will likely all have really doing in your practices already. We know it's in B Corp, in the quality standards in GM, and optimizing medicines. We know it's obviously diabetes is, you know, front and center of QOF. We know it's in the PCN-DES as well. So the system for quality improvement is saturated with diabetes. So hopefully this is something that you're feeling very confident with, but there's a few pointers there in terms of when you go away and you're speaking, if you're not a GP here today, but you're speaking with your clinicians, this would be a good place to sort of just run some searches and have a look. Also around asthma, not only are they the people on your asthma register, but those that have had rescue steroids in the last 12 months, obviously provides some insight into their proactive monitoring and management plan. And again, so it's looking at people that have had oral steroids prescribed, along with whether there's evidence of an adequate assessment at the time of prescribing, whether or not they were followed up, regular asthma treatment reviewed, adjusted since the exacerbation, whether they've got other meds with steroids in. So a whole series of searches based on best practice to check that the few cases that they'll check whether or not there's any palpable risk evidence, which will then get them to do a little bit more of a deeper dive. The last one here as an example is chronic kidney disease. Those patients with stages 4 or 5 who have not had their user needs monitored in the last 9 months. So again, looking at very specific data, having a deep dive into some of those to check if there's any flags and whether there's any evidence of issues with management of those patients and potential patient harm. And, you know, if people haven't been called in, then what actions have been taken to get them in. And of course, what we do know is when they come in and look at, or beforehand, they look at your clinical system and they ask you for consent to do that, they will not only look at the audit of the day they're doing it, but if, you know, they will search back to see when people did have certain blood tests done, or did have certain diagnostics, or did have their reviews. So they're looking to see a good spread in relation to your recall, rather than a very targeted couple of weeks of, you know, trying to catch up. So in relation to this bit, there is, for those of you who have ARDNs within your practice, there are, you'll know the searches, you'll know they're available, but also just for those practices who don't have access to ARDNs, and if you didn't know, you can still access the CQC guides and searches. You just sign up for a free account and you can see those. They're available for eMist and Vision, and they have the instructions how to do those. Reinforcing here, whilst the CQC Mythbusters state we may look at this drug, we may look at that drug, please, you know, take those out. These are typically elements which will be reviewed. You know, often there's no may about it, it's more of a will. The other key bit of learning which we've had over the years, and I wanted to just put it in here because I think it is a key takeaway, is if the practice makes a decision not to do something, and I'll give you an example, hold a particular drug in your emergency medicines, for example, then I really urge you to always undertake a risk assessment, in order to demonstrate insight and an active and informed decision-making process around that decision, minute the discussion with who was there, and set a review date. Because if you can justify a reason for not doing something, whether it's because of patient harm or some other reason, then you can justify it. It's justifiable if it's based on evidence, facts, and informed decision. That's not to say you could do that on absolutely everything, but on certain things, and we'll try and look at those a little bit more. You know, there has to be an element of discretion. So always have your audit trail of why you've decided that. And even if the CQC inspector disagrees, you've got your evidence there to present it, and that will, you know, they will take that on board, that you've not just made a decision in a corridor and then that's, you know, this that's how you've adopted it. The other important thing to know and understand is what triggers an inspection. So we know it's a change of premises, a merger, quality concerns that have been raised by others, patient complaints, provider complaints. So if somebody out there decides to make a complaint, that might not trigger a full inspection, but it might just trigger them coming in and having some detailed discussions in the background, whether that's with commissioners or others. And now very much it's about the amount of time since the last inspection. So previously, when they got a real time lag, it was about those that were requires improvement, those that were, you know, this, that, and the other. Now it is literally, if you could be outstanding, but if it's over 7 years ago, you're going to be on a list in the not too distant future. Okay, so I just want to check time. And we're halfway through, so I'm going to have a slight change of direction now, as we've gone through and covered the basics really of what we're currently dealing with. I will just stop sharing for a second and invite any questions. Is there anything? Okay. Hopefully you're all still there.
I think we're all scared to death, Eve.
I don't want you to be scared to death.
I know,
I really don't. I know it, you know, and it's always going to feel, you know, a bit overwhelming. I know that, but the next section is trying to give people a little bit more hope, if they've lost it, or if they've lost, you know, the will to live with it. So I'll keep going. Now it is going to be a little bit interactive now. I know how everyone loves a bit of interaction during this. So I'll put my, this is when it's much easier when you're doing it in a room as opposed to over Teams. Anyway, so what we're going to do now, sorry, sharing the wrong thing. Too many windows open.
Sorry, Eve, just before you share the new one, I think we had a question in the chat about the length of time from the last inspection. It seems like some people have heard, is it 5 years instead of 7 years from the last inspection? And they're just asking for clarification on that. My understanding is the longer the riskier. They seem to be in localities prioritizing based on who has had the longest time. So depending on your locality, if there's practices that are on that 7 or 8 year mark, they will be inspected first. If most have been inspected in the last 5 years, then 5 is the golden number instead. I don't know if you know any different, Eve.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, I think within the data that they present, you know, they group it into the 5, but obviously that could still take a while for them to come through. But if it's further back than that, you know, or you've had a premises change or a merger, or there's been some noise about the practice, then it will be sooner. But if everything is quiet on the patch, you know, then they will go based on time. Okay, so I'm desperately trying to make sure I share the right screen. Is that back to housekeeping? Sorry, everyone. Let's go into this one. Okay. So moving on then, what I want to do, as every LMC you might know, loves a poll, loves getting some feedback. So if I just, I'm going to put the link in the chat. And what I'd like you all to do is have the next minute filling this out for me. I hope that's working. Is it working? Yeah, great. So, just stop sharing. Oh, it's not working my end. And then I should be updating.
It might be that people are still filling it in, Eve.
Okay.
Are you starting to get some answers through, Eve?
I'm not.
Okay, I think there's 4 or 5 that have been submitted according to the chat.
I can see there's 53 responses so far.
Can you?
Yeah,
I don't know what
in the form.
Okay, brilliant.
Amazing.
I don't know why I can't. Maybe I just need to be patient.
Might be worth coming out of it, even logging back into forms, see if it refreshes for you.
So when I practiced last night, it just did it, of course.
If Jo can see it, maybe she can share some of the outcomes.
Stop sharing. Okay. Well, thank you to everybody for doing that. Jo, are you there?
Do you want me to? Yes. Do you want me to share the screen?
Yes, please. Thank you. Thank goodness for having a team on the call.
Can you see that?
Yes. So can we go into, is there Okay, so we've had 82 responses, so not quite everybody, but a good indication. So 4 of you have had it this year, 4 of you last year, and the remainder, the lion's share, it's been in the last 2 to 6 years, really. So we've got a lot of people who are yet to have it under the new regime. So when we look at this, so these are all really key. How did you feel before your last inspection? 4 of you were confident, which is really good. 52 of you felt okay, and 27 were just, please, let's not go there and don't ask, which again is absolutely normal. And I wouldn't expect it to be any other way. How did you feel after? Which is interesting, obviously, when you compare it to the one above. If you can we just have both of those on the screen? Thank you. So afterwards, 13 of you felt you were like, you know, taking the world on and one, living the dream. 70% of you were relieved but anxious, and 12 of you were stressed, and I know what that feels like, and you know, I feel you, share your pain, but surprisingly there's a lot more that felt like okay coming out of it. It's the relief, and there were, you know, a few more of you who felt like that went really well. Okay, so what is the overall rating of your practice currently? So we got 90% on good, 7 outstanding, and a couple of you aren't sure, which is perfectly fine and understandable, depending on how involved you've been before. So this is when it starts to get a bit more personal, I suppose. How does the CQC rating at your practice affect you personally? Because general practice is full of people who care, they really care, and they really want to be doing the best they can do. And it hits all of us really personally when things don't work out. So it's good to see, you know, how does it affect you? 62 of you said it gives you confidence when you're recognised as doing things well, because of course CQC, although it has many negative connotations, also has some positive influence on how you feel as a practice and an individual. I take it personally, as everyone thinks it's my fault. That's a third of you that feel like that, and I get it. Everyone on the call will get that. And this is why we want to really work with as many practices as we can, whether you're in the locality that you cover or outside, to raise the confidence, but also the knowledge of the rest of your team in order to take that burden off 1 or 2 individual shoulders. I'm aware of it, but I don't really understand it all. Again, that will very much depend on your experience in general practice and the role that you have. And thankfully, nobody said it doesn't affect me, as it's nothing to do with me. You know, to be a person that it doesn't affect. But you know, we've clearly got a group of people that understand and appreciate that, you know, it affects everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
So what are the greatest barriers to feeling confident when it comes to CQC? And I wanted you to sort of tick all of them. So the greatest barrier, clearly constantly in stress mode and too busy firefighting to get on top of it. And I think that's something that is palpable in the profession, and in management and within the teams, not just now, but it has been for a long time. Lack of time available, again, because you're constantly doing other things and things come to the priority list. Then we've got the greatest barriers to feeling confident, the fear of being blamed, if things don't go to plan. Lack of understanding and involvement from staff. So again, that's what we really want to focus on. How wide the scope is, lack of consistency from CQC. And again, that's where we're really keen to support you, try and make it more manageable. And a lack of ownership and involvement from partners. And again, that is something that is crucial. So it doesn't just feel like one or two's responsibilities. And we'll come on to talk about that and explore, you know, the difference in the leadership and who that involves, and you know, key responsibilities of individuals. How would you like to feel when you hear CQC? Okay, so all of you pretty much are ticking, you know, more than one here, and are really keen, that confident all the team know what is and why it's so important, confident the team know where their role fits into the day-to-day running of the practice, confident everyone in the practice understands CQC compliance is a team responsibility, can't say it all. Confident everyone feels they can feedback on things they don't feel are working well. Confident when a serious incidents occur, everyone understands their role in preventing it happening again. Confident when complaints are made, they're a way of learning something new rather than being taken personally and bringing you down, in effect. So thank you for that. I think it's important to do a sense check because, you know, as I said at the start, this really, though we're being recorded, it is a safe space. We want it to be something that brings value, not just from a knowledge, but from the way you feel about CQC. So we're just going to fire up the slide deck, and we've got 30 minutes left. So let's bring this up again. There we go. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some context before we move on. Okay, let's just do it so I can see people. So, general practice. Often in the news for all the wrong things, people not understanding what goes on behind the scenes other than measuring appointments and access and how many days to an appointment. And what I want to do is try and frame it. So some of you may have seen this. It's on Tableau, which you can all get access to through the informatics team, and we can share that link if you haven't already. It's a wealth of information. This is another subject that we'll cover some point, but this is all taken from your clinical systems by GM. Okay, this particular data set that I've got on the screen at the moment is a result of your GPAD submissions. There is a delay in it, but what this particular one is showing is the number of appointments in Greater Manchester general practice over the last couple of years. Okay, and as of September this year, your practices, the 420 that we have, collectively delivered almost 1.5 million appointments, whether that's same day, whether that's in 3 weeks' time, because that's what your capacity is or what patients are choosing. And this is data that's taken, so I can see that there's 1% of practices that doesn't involve there, but it's 99% coverage of practice data. We can see the year before it was 1.4 million. So significant in 1 month. And the year before that, 1.4 million. Not an insignificant amount, and that's happening on a monthly basis. We can see in October each of those years, as you will know better than anyone, there's an increase, a pretty sharp increase, another 200,000 appointments delivered in that month, and that's growing. So last year it was 1.8 million during the month of October, and we haven't yet got next month's data on here, the October, but let's face it, we know it's not going to be less than it was last year. It's only going to be more, especially with the turn on of the compulsory and mandatory online consultation through core hours. Sorry, just problems with this now. So the next slide that I wanted to share with you is the appointments in general practice, but this is focusing on by mode. So of that 1.4 million appointments back in September this year, almost 1 million were face-to-face. So that kind of flies in the face, doesn't it, of I can't see my GP and I can't see them in person. It's not an insignificant amount. Home visits, telephone, video, online consultation. Yeah, they're sizable on the phone, but, you know, even add all those other methods up, they're not even anywhere near the face-to-face appointments. Does this appointment data account for? I can see a question in the chat about whether this accounts for appointments in a PCN setting. Only if the data is going into practices clinical record and their appointment book. So if you've got a hub and you're doing extended access, for example, that way, then no. So this is the minimum number of appointments happening and being delivered by whether it's general practice standalone or as a collective within their PCN. And that is a limitation of the GPAD data, which we as LMCs always sort of try and highlight to people looking at this data. So we can see the days of the week that your data is being and pulling out. Again, not surprised by that. And it shows that, you know, 60+% are face-to-face. Next one, I've only got one more of these to share with you, but the 1.5 million appointments, 651 were same day, which is significant. It's huge. The demand is huge. The expectation is huge. You know, can somebody, sorry.
Sorry, Eve. I think the slides are still showing the very first slide that we can see. Yes, I think a couple of people have popped that in the chat. So I don't know if you want to stop and reshare the current slide. If not, I can try and take over and share the one you were just talking through.
I think Eve's frozen, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think I might try and see if I can take over the sharing while she reconnects. Bear with me. If it will let me.
Fortunately, I think there's a bit of an internet outage in some areas.
Yes, there is.
I'm
not sure. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm not presenting yet. I'm just going to try and present. It's just loading up. Oh, it started from the beginning. Bear with me, everyone. I'm just going to skip over to the slides that we were just on. Really sorry about this. I'm getting there. Okie dokie. Right. So this was the. Oh,
Ah, you're back.
I'm sorry. My
Don't
sincere
worry.
apologies. Something went drastically wrong. Is that you, Afro?
it is. Yeah. I've just brought up the slides you were just talking through, Eva. I'll keep mine up if you like, and then I'll just click
yes,
through.
please. That would
Yeah.
be very helpful. Thank you.
I
Okay, so
you-
that was the face-to-face and home visiting.
Yeah.
Here we have the huge number of same day, and we've got the 1 day on top of that and within a week as well. So a significant amount. So this is just to build context, okay? If you can carry on.
Eve, in the meantime, there was a question about whether CQC will be able to see the data from Tableau directly. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Yeah, as far as I'm
Okay.
aware, they can
Yeah.
get access via the ICB and pull the data. This data is on NHS Digital, so this is public data. Not necessarily this bit, but the GP data is anybody could sign in and get that.
Can I add to that, sorry, Eve, just quickly, that I think on Curator, which is the new version of Tableau, for some of these, you can actually drill down to locality PCN and practice level. So there is a possibility that CQC could get access to that data and then drill down on your practice to see how it compares to others in your locality or in GM. So I just wanted to mention that briefly. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. So just wanting to put your 1.5 million appointments a month in context to where we know a lot of the emphasis of the system and the budget within the system goes to, and that's A&E, urgent treatment centre and outpatient attendances. Now, we know you will have all experienced the email in the middle of the day saying our A&E is in Opal 4, we can't take any more, please can you stop signposting people to it, when in actual fact, one, you haven't signposted them anywhere near it because you're too busy doing what you do, but actually sadly the reverse doesn't apply, does it, that you don't get to ask others to stand up more services and you know, take some of the burden when you're absolutely snowed under. So looking at this data, it's 45% of recorded activity. This equates to less than half of what our sector does month on month. Okay, so again, we need to change this narrative and really understand what it is as a sector we bring to the party, we deliver for our patients, and make sure that, you know, we're confident in saying what we do and how well we do it. The next slide, Efrosini, if you don't mind, is something that you may all have seen before, the iceberg diagram. Certainly if you're a sado like me and follow GP things on Facebook, this comes up, but it was really worthy of a mention, and it's around the unrecognised demands on general practice. So the GPAD pulls together some of the data, and that's what largely people are measured against, certainly, you know, in the eyes of the media. However, we know, working in it, living and breathing it, there's so much more that you and your team are responsible for delivering. It's massive. 90% of the NHS contacts happen in our sector. And that isn't just patient facing. We know at least 50% of a GP's day is not patient facing, but still doing clinical work, decision making. And the rest of the team are doing their role. Thank you. So the unrecognised demands come from a whole host of places, all of which you'll recognise. And I've probably missed some off, so we can add those on before the next session. And the thing is, with each of those things that are in that iceberg, that each has a demand that has multiple processes, time requirements, time frames, skill and expertise requirements. Not everything is just one person, it's a team of people's experience, interdependencies and risks. So even when we look at just the iceberg, it feels like, okay, there's a good few things there, but behind though, we know, and you know, there's a multitude of different things that are required. Thanks, Efrosini. So just reflecting on that, and I appreciate it's probably all sounding a little bit depressing, and I'm not meaning to, but I'm just trying to set the tone, is, so what is culture? And why does it matter? Why, if we get a different culture going on, how can it make everything that we've seen a little bit more systematic, tolerable, shared between more than just yourselves, a wider team responsibility and contribution? So the reason it matters, so firstly, culture is the way we do things around here. It's maybe something that you've always done. It's not documented, it's just how you do things. The problem with having a culture that isn't all inclusive and isn't considered a positive culture, and we'll come on to see what that is shortly, it has impacts, negative and positive. So it can impact safety, morale, well-being, relationships, patient trust, quality of care and outcomes. So it underpins the right or less positive culture, underpins everything we do. And what we do know is CQC recognise the right type of culture as the difference between a good and outstanding, and the key contributor to a required improvement or inadequate when not embedded within practice. So it's you can't see it, but you can feel it. So why is it so important for practice, and why does it matter? Thanks, Efrosini. So patient experience and trust. Positive practice culture encourages respectful communication, better listening, patients feeling safe and understood. And that leads to higher patient satisfaction and hopefully compliance and adherence and respect for you and your practice team. Quality and safety of care. Good culture supports open discussion of mistakes, learning rather than blaming, team members raising concerns early, and it promotes ownership by staff and results in safer, more reliable care. Well-being and retention of your staff. In a healthy culture, staff feel valued, workloads are managed collaboratively, promotes confidence, and burnout rates fall. And all of that is critical, as we know, of the demands that's placed on your services every day. Teamwork and efficiency. Practices with strong culture communicate clearly, solve problems collectively, work more smoothly during busy periods. Fewer errors, less duplication, better workflow are the outcomes of having a more open culture. And adaptation and innovation, something that we don't all have time to do every day, but again, something that I suspect most people strive towards, is a supportive culture makes it easier to introduce new tools and digital ones, change appointment systems, respond to policy changes. And practices with that poor culture tend to resist change, and it can hold back improvement, and it can impact morale as well and motivation. Thank you. So a little bit of a summary: closed versus open culture, staff environment. There can be a fear of blame if it's a very closed culture. An open culture is people feel confident and safe to speak up, not in a, you know, conflicted way, confrontational way, but they have the space within the environment in which they work to be able to talk about things. And again, we'll come on to some of the practicalities of how practices can integrate that into a structured series of meetings that don't then add on to the burden of everything else that people have to do. Closed culture is very top down. An open one is very supportive and transparent. Communication of a closed culture is very one way. Open, it's multi-way. And it's also around incident reporting. And this is one of the key things for CQC. Practices who tend to not do so well or don't get the rating that they would have liked often don't relay some of the critical and key things that their leadership does to the rest of the team. So it's incident reporting in particular cannot be something that is discussed openly. Those that have a more open culture do that proactively. And that was one of the biggest learnings for practices that I've supported out of special measures, was how empowered everybody felt when they had that time to talk about a serious incident that had happened, and every part of the practice started to realise how important their role was in that process. Rather than just hearing an outcome and not really relating to it and not understanding how they contribute to it. Thanks, Efrosini. So what I did prior to this meeting, just for some context, I looked at CQC. So I did this earlier today. On there, when you search up general practice and CQC, it shows you the number of practices that are rated overall at the different levels. So the greatest, as you'd expect, being good. The second greatest is not rated. And then we've got outstanding and requires improvement, weirdly identical, and then inadequate on 17. So then I started to drill down and explore the year of inspection for those rated inadequate. So over half were from this year, just for context. If you can just forward on to the table to pop up. So then I looked at those 17 inspection reports and had a look at which of the areas and the domains were rated and what. So, you know, as we know, practices who are rated inadequate often remain caring, and it comes through in their inspections. And that was the case on this, that there was 8 good and 9 requiring improvement, but nobody came up inadequate in that particular domain. You know, and that's testament to practices and why they do what they do. However, what we can see on the 17 from a safe perspective, 17 of those were inadequate, and 17, 100% from the well-led were inadequate as well. So it's a stark sort of statistic. You know, it doesn't necessarily, being caring and responsive doesn't necessarily go hand in hand with you know, having a different outcome, but the safe and the well-led was sort of very clearly a marker of some of the fundamental problems. Next slide, please. So I did the same on the other end of the spectrum for outstanding. Okay, I didn't, you'll be pleased to know, go 306 reports, but I took the same number, the first 17 listed. So these were both in the last couple of years. all of them in the last couple of years. And what we can see is those that, and it talks to what we read earlier, none of those practices had anything in the inadequate side, in the requires improvement side, but nor did they for safe have outstanding in it. They had good. Effective, the majority were good. Caring, pretty even between outstanding and good. Responsive, strong, favour of those that were rated outstanding were rated outstanding for the responsive. And, you know, probably the point that I'm trying to make is the majority were well led as well. And often the well led element is almost at the bottom of the priority list, because it requires a different set of skills. It requires different engagement. It's not always overly role specific either, which we will come on to. Thanks, Efrosini. So I won't go, in the interest of time, through these slides, but I would encourage you to have a look at them. So these I pulled out of one of those listed. If you just go back, Efrosini, sorry. It's horrible doing slides for someone else, isn't it?
Sorry,
this is
the right slide?
Okay.
Yeah.
This is one of the 17 that I worked through this morning, and these were the key pull-throughs of what they were deemed of doing or not doing. So I'm just going to spend a minute on this one in particular, but it didn't always investigate incidents thoroughly, and there was no learning. Not all the risks had been identified and mitigated against. Recruitment checks did not hold all the relevant checks and documents. Not all staff had received their annual appraisal. Remote clinical searches identified people were involved in assessments of their needs. So we've got a positive one there. However, staff had not received up-to-date training to effectively undertake their role. Some delays in reviewing test results and documentation, but people were treated with kindness and compassion. On the next slide, it goes through further evidence of what came up, and that particular one, because it was inadequate, was placed in special measures. Of the 17 I looked through this morning, was suspended, had its contract suspended because the risk was so great. If we then scroll on to, I've done the same for the outstanding. Oh, we've got a summary of the common features of inadequate practice from CQC inspections. So again, some really good, neat boxes, if you like, of what to look out for. And what we will do on the next session is look at these in a little bit more detail. The next set of slides focus in on, I did the same. So there was one that had outstanding for everything, had a good for safe, and it was what were the key palpable things that we could see. And it was very much about a good learning culture where people could raise concerns. Leadership team investigated incidents thoroughly. Risks were mitigated about facilities and equipment, staff with the right skills, qualification and experience. Leaders made sure staff received their training, and staff managed medicines well and involved patients in that. There's a whole list of other things, some really good pointers for people to make it a little bit more tangible. And much of it is around understanding, based on evidence, good practice and collaborative and supportive leadership, but also staff taking ownership and responsibility to understand how their role fits into the bigger picture. Thank you. Oh, they've got more to say on that one. Thank you. So aspects of culture affecting CQC ratings. There's a number of things here, which again, we will go into as we move on through this series. I'm just going to find this in my pack. This one in particular talks about the leadership, visibility and approachability, communication and collaboration, continuous learning and reflection, compassion, inclusivity, and empowerment and ownership by staff and patients. And it's that psychological safety of openness. So as we go through how we start to do this, if you haven't done it already, again, it will feel like there's a little bit more to do to start with, but once you've got those processes in place, it becomes business as usual. It becomes the norm, and it helps people do their job more safely. You know, it's impossible to do all of these things if only a small few understand what CQC is, what culture is, and it's why each of your staff has a vital role to play. And that is going to come from sharing some of this work with them. It might be that we put it on for another group of people to start to get them to understand at scale, you know, the challenges that the team as a whole have. The next slide is very similar actually as that slide, sorry, but really this is around measuring and reflecting on the culture. There are some tools where we can do a test of culture, so that might be something you want to consider. But there is a much more straightforward structural and organizational way that it can be implemented pretty quickly. So the key takeaway before we sort of wrap up is culture is lived. It's not written. It is observable and influential. Inspectors can see through daily behaviours, but the positive culture is palpable to them. And it's, you know, it's something that they can come in and sense. And over the course of the next couple of months, we will do more of these, and hopefully by the time we've completed those, you will have a greater sense of being able to have a very open culture within the practice that takes the pressure off the few key individuals that tend to be associated with leading the practice in that way. So I'm conscious of time. If we could stop sharing, are there any questions? You can put them in the chat after the meeting. You can email us as well if there's anything else that you would like to, perhaps somebody could put our team email in the chat out of my team. That would be really helpful. Karen.
Yeah, just a quick one. If a practice wanted to find either a company or a person to come in and assess where a practice was at with all this kind of work, who would we go to for any recommendations?
Okay, well, that's a question I'd pose to the group. If anybody's used anybody, if they can put it in the chat. There was talk with the GP Excellence of us being able to help with that, but of course it would depend on demand and capacity. But we've certainly got a whole load of resources that we will share with you that would help make a start. And in there is a mock inspection pro forma as well. But has anybody put anything in the chat about who they've used?
Not yet, but
said they're able to help. Yeah, so yeah. I guess first port of call would be your LMC, of course. But if you're, all LMCs vary, just as other sectors vary. If it's not something your LMC offers, then I suggest you ask them to speak to their LMC colleagues. So that would include us. That might include Manchester, Tameside. That there should be somebody there that can meet that need. So somebody else has put CQC assured did inspections for our PCN last year. Are there any other questions?
Just someone asking about the recording, but I think you've already confirmed that's going to be circulated, isn't it, Eve?
Yeah. Now,
Great.
we haven't got a satisfaction or a feedback form, but we'll get one sent round. This is the first time we've done this at scale. We've done it for our practices, but you know, please give some feedback. I hope it's been helpful and informative. I hope it's sort of met expectations, and I look forward to working with you all on the next series. Okay, thank you. Take care.
Thank
Thanks
you.
very much.
Bye.
Thanks, Eve.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.